Michael, how you doing?
Hi, Bob. How you doing? And thank you again for having me back on the show.
You are awesome.
Thank you.
No, seriously, I love having you on the show. We did play a little piece in the beginning there about regression, and
Yes.
and after this last election, I'm going to go up to your place and get regressed. I'm serious.
Come on up.
I'm serious. I'm not kidding you. I mean, really. You know what? I tell you, people don't realize that, and I'm sure you're going to explain this a lot better than I do, but they don't realize that your soul, what we call soul, is your soul since the beginning of time. We all live different lives in different bodies all the time, yet if you were to tell somebody in the street, hey, listen, what were you before you were in this, this time frame? And they'd look at you like you were out of your mind, drinking too much, and they'd throw you back in the clink. But it's true. It really, really is something that, people just don't realize, that we're actually, the body's here, but the rest of the body's been somewhere else before here.
Right. We've lived many, many lives over hundreds, thousands, and thousands of years.
Well, just more or less explain a little bit about the whole process to get to the point that you actually know where you came from.
Well, from a past life session, you're saying? Asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what happens is a client comes in, and we bring him into a hypnotic state, a trance state. But we have to bring him in, Bob, into a very deep hypnotic state. And, there's different brain waves, if you will. We have, beta, which is your conscious state. You have alpha brain waves. You have theta, and then delta. And when we do the past life work, we have to get the client into a theta trance state, which is a very deep trance state. And it's equivalent to the REM sleep, where we have lucid dreaming. So we have to really get the client back relaxed into that state, and from there, it's really amazing how the channels open up and what comes through.
Yeah. So when you get to that point, they more or less are to the point that they are going to talk to you and tell you where they've been.
Right. So what happens is, the way it works, you have to bring them back nice and slow. So what I do is I will start the hypnosis session with what we call an induction. Induction is just a way to get the body and the mind to relax, get the client to just, release, relax, get very, very comfortable in the chair, and begin the process of engaging with that hypnotic state, which essentially is a very focused mind. So you're in that trance state. Once we get the client relaxed, then we do a couple of exercises where I back them into the current life. I take them back to a couple of moments in the life they're living today, back to maybe when they were 18, 19, 20 years old. Tell me a little bit about a memory from there. Give me some details. Then I take them back to when they're 5 or 6. Then I take them back into the womb. And then from the womb, I back them into a past life.
Wow. So is that what you mean by induction?
Yeah, that's the induction. The induction is getting them relaxed and then starting, I call them exercises. It's really an exercise to get the client very comfortable with and familiar with the process of the memories coming back. Because even when you think about it, if you ask somebody, hey, tell me about, very specifically about a moment in time when you were really happy and you were having a good time with your friends when you were 18 years old, many people would stumble over that. They would come up, let me just think about that, right? So when I do the session with them and I take them back to that point in time, that starts the process of them getting comfortable and starting to realize unconsciously that, hey, you know what? I'm recalling memories very easily here. This is very lucid. So basically it's a conditioning type of process so that we get them to the point where they're ready to go into that past life. If you just try to do a basic induction, try to relax them and try to pop them back into a past life, in most cases that won't work. The client will block and the session will come up empty.
So actually what you're explaining to me is what you do is a little different than what I hear a lot of different hypnotic people do this for people.
Right.
I mean, I've heard stories like, well, I did remember something, but it's like there's no real, how would you call it? Like a personal feeling like I was somewhere. Someone that was with you would probably come out of the whole regression meeting and jump up and down and go, do you know what I just found out?
Well, when they go through it with me, I could tell you that it's a very profound experience for them. First of all, when clients call me up and they ask about a past life, one of the first questions I ask them is, have you ever had one before? And they'll say, well, I did a couple of years ago, and I'll ask them, how long did the session last? And they'll say, 45 minutes. Now, I'm not knocking anybody, and I'm not, trying to take away from anybody else's practice of what they do, but 45 minutes is not enough time to really get somebody into that theta state.
That's how long
I'm talking about the average person.
That's how long
I take 45 minutes just to get them,
right?
Inducting them.
Right. That's in 45 minutes. So, all right, how long would you say a whole session takes?
When I do my sessions, I tell the clients to book 3 hours, and they're typically in hypnosis anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours.
So, all right, how many sessions does a person have to complete this whole process?
Well, my approach is I do one session. So they come in, and they're in my office for 3 hours, 2 to 2.5 of which is under hypnosis, going through the past life session. So I don't do it like what some regressionists do is they say, okay, well, you come in for 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll do a little work, and then you come in for a second session, we'll pick up where we left off, and so on and so forth. I think that's Brian Weiss's approach. I don't do it that way. What I do is I complete the whole cycle in one session, and the client's there for, like I said, 2.5 hours in hypnosis, 3 hours total, because after they get out of it, they have to get grounded.
Yeah, that is also Brian's, by the way, and that is on YouTube. And that I've seen that, and what I call, we've talked before on the show, so I know what you do, and his is a quickie.
Yes, that's how he operates. Yep.
Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3. You're in there. Or you're at. Who knows? Maybe somebody wound up in Atlantis or something. You never know. Or some.
Well, it also depends, Bob, on the client. So if you have a client that is very familiar with going into hypnosis and going into that theta state, that very, very meditative state, then it's possible that you can do these quick, short sessions and get them there. But typically, when most people come in for a past life session, they have never had hypnosis before. So to me, and again, this is my personal view, the way I do this, that process of these 45-minute to 1 hour sessions and then, doing multiples of those, maybe 8, 9, or 10 of them, I don't really see how that can work very well. I really do think the time needs to be taken to get most clients into that state because, like I said, they have never had hypnosis before.
Wow. I never have either. Forget about it. You'd be working on me for 45 minutes just to knock me out. Probably a couple of hammers would do it, but hey. I swear to God. When you have someone laying there, come on. There's got to be a lot of people in there that just don't believe in being hypnotized, even though they come to you for that treatment. Or let's face it, a lot of people go for smoking and a whole bunch of other stuff. What do they call it? Sadness, grief, anger. There's a million different things that you can go for hypnosis for.
Right.
But past life regression, that's all by itself. But here's a question for you, though, and let me see if I can make this colorful. If I was going to be hypnotized, is there a way that you can steer me so that I know where I'm going instead of just landing someplace?
You're talking from a past life perspective?
Right. And in other words, when you're going back through lives, and
right.
What I'm thinking is when you go back through that life process, you could wind up in one life and maybe miss 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Okay, so what I don't do is I don't take the client back to something specific. And sometimes I'll have clients ask me, hey, can I choose the life? But that's kind of an interesting question when you think about it because how do you know whether the life you think that you want to go back to you actually had? So I don't work that way. What I do is I tell my clients, your guides and your teachers, your spiritual aspect, will take you back to the past life that's most important to you right now. So in other words, it's their choosing. They're the final arbiter. Your guides and your teachers, they know what you need at this point in time. They know what you need to be aware of, so they will take you back to that life. And it's amazing. I mean, they just never miss the mark. They take the clients back to a life, and we go through the session, and the client comes out of it and says, that was unbelievable. And I will ask them, I said, did it connect some dots for you? And they'll say, you would not believe how many dots it connected. So that's typically how it works. The guides and the teachers will take them back, and I will tell a client that's what will happen.
Oh, so they actually have someone that guides them through their past.
Right. Well, what happens is many people who come in, they believe that they have guides, teachers, angels, spiritual aspects, their higher self that is with them all the time. And when we have these sessions, and I can tell you that there's a lot of energy going on in that room, and their guides are with them, their teachers are with them, and will help them, get into that state and take them back to that life. It's a very, very amazing phenomenon.
This is what I'm trying to bring out a little bit in this conversation, because we've never added this part before. There is a spiritual side to all of this,
yes,
because of the plain fact as we are working with something that is really not physical. It's spiritual. It's
right.
Electrical. It's energy. And because of that, it comes, you're actually taking two things and melding them together to work together.
Right.
And that is all by itself, it's kind of sort of a miracle. That's why people come out of it and they're probably saying like, oh my God, I don't believe what I just did,
That's exactly right, because most people are just familiar with and accustomed to, because of the culture and the society and institutionalized religion, it's just the physical aspect. It's just your body. That's it. It's what you see and hear. It's what, you can kind of detect with your five senses. That's it. And so they don't really understand, and they've never really connected to that aspect of themselves. It's outside of that physical realm. So they haven't really experienced what is it like to connect to the non-physical, into the, we call it the spiritual aspect, right? But
right.
Some people prefer it to be the non-physical realms. I mean, they feel more comfortable with that. So most people are not familiar with that. So when they have that experience, it's an eye-opener, because all of a sudden they're sitting there and they're in the chair and they're experiencing these memories, and it's coming through very clear, very lucid, very spontaneously. And it's just, it's a game changer for a lot of people when they come in and have the sessions.
I did have a couple of questions after our last session that you and I had. What is the difference between this and NDE?
Well, there's a lot of similarities. That's a very good question. And, I did a lot of reading on NDEs, and I was very intrigued by that. And so when I got into past life regressions, what I noticed immediately is many of the aspects and the details and the stories that were told with NDEs were actually coming through with past life regressions also. One of the key things is that, a lot of the debunkers like to say it's hallucinogenic. It's kind of like it's the brain getting cut off from the oxygen, and there's a hallucinogenic state or moment with an NDE and stuff like that. But the problem with that is it's the consistency of what people who have NDEs experience. There's a pattern, and it's consistency to the process, what happens. They see the light, there's the tunnel. Many times they meet other beings. They could be related to them, or they could be other beings that greet them, and so on and so forth. And it's the same type of theme. It's the same type of pattern and consistency that I see with past lives.
Oh, so
the same thing.
So could it be, physically, is it the same part of the brain that is being activated at that point?
Well, I think what it is I think it leaves the brain. It's no longer the brain. I think what happens is what we're actually seeing is the soul, the non-physical energy, the non-physical parts of us that are now detaching. And they're leaving that body, they're leaving that brain. And they're just, okay, it's time to go now. And you're having that with an NDE, because that's what happens when many of the NDE stories will say that they, felt themselves float to the top of the room. They're watching everything that's going on in the operating room or in adjacent rooms where they can see their family waiting for them.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing when I do the past life regressions. When I go to the past life regressions, they go through that past life, but then they go to the death scene in that past life. And after that death scene, what happens is their soul leaves the body and goes up to the astral. And so I have, I ask a lot of questions to my clients about that moment in time. So what happens? Now you're dying now, you're passing, yes, okay. Is your soul still in the body? No. Okay, so your soul is out of the body, yes. And so what's your soul doing? It's going home. Many times what I find when I do the work is the soul doesn't stick around. I mean, the soul looks at what's going on here. It understands that these are lessons. We're in a school. Earth is a school. It's a very, very challenging school. It's like being in a play. And when the part is over, when the play is over, it's time to go home. And that's what the soul does. And it just, it leaves. Sometimes it may stick around. The soul may stick around for a few days, just to check things out and, maybe visit a little bit. Especially, I see that typically when there's a life where maybe there was family, there was little kids, and they want to stick around a little bit just to try to get the message across to the children that they're okay, that everything's okay, I'm all right, type of thing. So you'll see that. I'll see that occasionally, but typically what happens is the soul realizes, hey, it's time now. It's time to go home. This life is over. This lesson's over. Class is out.
Okay. I mean, it's wow. That's pretty wild. I mean, people,
it's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really serious, Mike. When you really, really think about it, I mean, and this has been something we've gone over with before, and I've gone over with other guests also. People just don't realize. Bad enough they just went through an election they didn't realize, but never mind that part. But when you actually think about why you're here, I mean, if you had to put a definition of why you're here, if you were regressed at a session just once, you'd probably know why.
Yes. Yes, in fact, that's one of the questions I ask Bob when I bring him back. So before I mentioned to you, when I do the induction, I then have him do some exercises after the induction, going back in time in his current life and back to the womb. In the womb is when I ask them, what is the purpose of this life? Why are you coming this time? What is it you have to learn? What is it you have to do? And it's really amazing. Even in the womb, because the soul has just gotten there now. The soul hasn't been essentially basically suppressed or inundated with life yet. That's how I should probably phrase it, right? So it's still in its soul form, and they will come back. And typically, the overriding theme that I get when I ask that question is to help others. And it's a very, very powerful statement. It's a very simple one, but I cannot tell you how many times that comment comes back to me from the client, from their soul perspective. I'm here to help others. And then they'll have some other things too. They have to learn this, they have to learn that, and everything else. But typically they start with, I have to help others.
Wow. That's, really, when you think about it, that's a mouth and a half full. One of those kind of things.
Well, it tells you a lot about what humanity's supposed to be doing.
Now you're touching the wrong thing now, because we're not doing that, are we?
No, we're not doing it very well.
No, we're let's face it, we're really, that's no good. But anyway, we're going to take a short break just for a couple seconds, Ned, do a couple of commercials here, and we'll be right back. And let me tell you, you guys, there's a chat box here. You can use the chat box. If you got any questions, you can also send them to bobcharlesshow@live.com. Or call in at 843-225-8292. I'll get the message, and I will ask Mike, and we will get this thing going. It's getting hot. What we're doing tonight, and if you people are just tuning in now, you're lucky because you're going to get some good stuff. But we're talking with a friend and a leader in a field, Mike Williams, Imagine Hypnotics, past life regression. We're talking heavy stuff. So we're going to continue this conversation right now with, and I'm going to nail this one. All right, say, Mike, I go back into past life regression, and I come out, and I'm saying, like, this is great, this is awesome, I just had a great, thing, and whatever. Am I going to remember everything?
Yeah, you'll remember, huge pieces of it, Bob. There might be some little nuances, some details that you may not recall right away when you emerge. Typically, a couple of hours later, the next day or whatever, you'll start having that recall. But all the major messages that you were supposed to get, you will remember all of those. You'll have those as soon as you emerge from the trance state.
This is one thing that I heard in one of the clips that I saw. You don't come out the person that went in.
Yes.
You come out feeling different.
What you're referring to there is people have a shift with regard to their perspective on life.
But if you shift, that's a big shift.
Well, what happens is, people, they get a sense of understanding of the bigger picture in their life or for their life. They start understanding that there is a higher calling. They understand that there clearly is a divine. And they really understand that their soul has a purpose, and it allows them to start embracing their life purpose in this life, and it helps them better navigate this life. It really does connect a lot of dots for a lot of people, because most people, when they come in, they will say to me, I ask them beforehand, what is it that you really want to get out of the session? What do you want to ask your guides and your teachers to help you with? And the vast majority of the folks, I would say probably about 90%, say, I just want to understand the purpose of my life. I just feel like I'm drifting. I feel like I'm just banging around. I just feel like I'm just, just living. I'm not doing anything with any purpose. So what am I supposed to be doing? And they get that message loud and clear when they have the session.
Can you actually get to that stage? I mean, I don't know if I've ever been there, but I mean, can you ever get to that stage in your life and that when you just don't know?
Know.
I know you're waiting. I know you're waiting for the word after that, but there is no word after that. It's like, somebody just gets to the point that they just don't know. I mean, it's like, what am I supposed to do tomorrow? Am I doing the right thing? I go to work every day. I come home. I have dinner. I go to sleep. I get up the next day and I go to work. It's like the repetition in your life all the time. And that is this really what I'm supposed to do because I don't feel good doing it?
Well, that's exactly it. That's the rut, right? And a lot of people, that's what they're experiencing in life because, that's how the system has everybody aligned,
right?
Or they make them believe that that's how they're supposed to operate. So, and people, because what happens is their soul is trying to break out, right? There's a yearning that says, hey, you know what? You're supposed to be doing more than that. But they're not quite sure what it is that they're supposed to be doing, or what is my track? What is my path? Is there a divine? Is there a creator? Is there a source? I mean, I get that a lot too, and they just want to be able to understand that. Is there a non-physical realm? And so when they come in after the session, they really do have a very, very different perspective. They really do. I mean, some people, they shift more profoundly than others, but I have yet to see somebody who's come in for a session and not have some shift, some level of awareness that there is a bigger picture, there is a higher purpose.
When people are under, and this is something else that I saw in one of the clips in that too, and I'm asking you as what you do in your practice, would you be able to actually date times that they go back in time?
Right. So, date and times, what I tell my clients is not to get too hung up on dates and times. There are many times when dates and times are revealed, and there are other times when there are approximations. In other words, what year is it? It's in the 1600s. It's in the 1500s. It's in the 1800s. And the reason for that is because the guides and your teachers are not interested in the human interests or the human aspects of this. Humans are very intrigued. What they want to do is they want to get a date, they want to get an address, what town that I live in, and most people will go back and want to Google themselves, right?
Yeah.
Right. So what I have found is that when dates and times and ages and names of towns are pertinent, when it's important to the lesson that's supposed to be coming across in this session, the guides and the teachers will reveal it. Otherwise, it's of little interest to the guides. Their take on it is, look, are you really here to know what street you lived on in the 1800s or what town you lived in? Or are you here to understand how it is that this past life can help you better navigate and understand your current life? From a guide and teacher perspective, it's that. It's not all these specifics. And what happens is, all these books are written. And, of course, books are written so that they can sell books. So they put all these amazing stories in them. But what a lot of people don't realize is when those books are written, they're pulling the most extraordinary sessions that, some of these therapists, these hypnotherapists have engaged in, or it's a composite of multiple hypnotherapists submitting work in, their best cases type of thing. And so you may have, 25 to 30 case studies in a particular book, but impressions. And, and to be fair to everybody so that they understand if they think that it's very, very pinpointed all the time, it's not. Because it's all about the lessons, and it's not about getting all those details sometimes.
Could somebody actually, and I'll give you an example, could somebody actually, and when you're bringing them back, and that say they do come up with a date or a time or something like that, could they ever get confused? For instance, a person, so you ask the person that, where are you? And a person would turn around and they would say, I'm standing in a field tending sheep. And you would say, well, where are you? And the person turns around and says, Brooklyn. So, I mean, can the mind actually do something like that?
I haven't really had that. When I get them back into that trance level, into that theta state, they're very, very deep. So they're not going to confuse the memory and what they're experiencing now with, maybe perhaps with where they are today or where they live today. I think that's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Okay. I typically, Bob, I'm trying to remember. I don't get a lot of confusion with the clients. In other words, once I get them to where they're at, in other words, they're in that field, we take it from there. And it's all correlated. It's all connected to that field, forward and backward, in that life. It doesn't get confused with other stuff.
That kind of makes sense. As I said, I think it all depends upon the person, though, because I mean, what they perceive, after something like that they would get confused on the other side. Because what the example that I just used, make believe, hypothetically, that person was actually a butcher in a warehouse in Brooklyn, but in his mind somewhere he was tending sheep in the field in Brooklyn. It all depends upon the person, the way they're, the way they say it.
Well, I mean, it's possible that they could, we call them skimmers. It's possible that they could be hitting one life.
Right.
And then shooting off into another life. Now, if that's what you're asking, then that is possible. I had a client, probably a couple of months ago, that rocketed through 3 past lives in one session.
Wow.
He was very lucid. He was very articulate. He was speaking to me, and he was deep in hypnosis. I mean, he was describing things to me as if he was looking at photographs and reporting back to me what was on that photograph. Or if he was watching a movie, he was explaining to me how, what was playing on that movie screen. So, yeah, you could have a situation where somebody bounces around. Typically, it doesn't happen often, but I'm not going to say it doesn't happen.
That's pretty cool, though. All right, here's one that you and I had a good time with last time. Annette, and it was one of the questions that you gave me because I've been all over the place. I mean, I'd be not a bad teacher, but I'd be interesting, that's for sure. Can a past life be from another planet? Now, before you answer, the last time we talked about that, we all come from somewhere. We didn't get here on this little rock all at the same time. Well, maybe we did. Who knows? But all at the same time. And what is the energy that makes this body move is something that had to have come from somewhere. So if somebody turns around and says they're on another planet, they probably were.
Right. Right. So the answer to your question is yes. The question is that I have done past life regressions where the client was someplace else other than Earth. They were a being on another planet. And it's really funny you should ask that question because I had a session last night, and it was a remarkable session. And this lady came in, and she bounced right back into a life, and it wasn't Earth.
Oops.
And she was another being, okay, and she didn't look human. And the amazing thing with her session was that she was very lucid. It was very clear. She articulated incredibly about what was going on. In fact, when I get those, and you don't get them very often, but you do get them. But when you get them, it's very intriguing, and I spend a lot of time asking questions about, what does it look like around you? Take a look around. Explain to me your surroundings. And it's amazing stuff. And they'll come back and say, well, it looks like this, and it looks like that, and these kinds of beings are around me. And I say, well, how do you look? And they'll explain to me how they look, and they're clearly not human. So, and I know, a lot of people probably hear this and, Mike's just telling stories or whatever, but I'm telling you, Bob, it's true. And, clients bounce back into lives where they were not on Earth and they're not humans. Because like you said, your soul, your energy is in the cosmos. And you can wind up anywhere in the multiverse to go have your experiences and learn your lessons. Earth just happens to be a popular place because it's so difficult and so challenging. And because of that, the soul develops quickly, it learns quickly. But there are other places where we incarnate and spend time to develop the soul.
So, in other words, what you're saying is we're always learning.
We're always learning. Yep. The soul's purpose is to increase its capacity for wisdom and increase its capacity for unconditional love. Those two things, when that is mastered, gets them to the source. And that's the soul's purpose. That's its motivation. Its motivation is to get to the source. So there's a perpetual state of learning to get there.
Do you ever get anyone in a situation where they can actually tell you what their end zone is, in a sense, like where they're trying to go?
From a soul perspective?
Yeah, like, what we're saying, and we've been talking since the beginning, the soul is always learning. If it's always learning, then it's always adding things or finding out or maybe they did make a mistake somewhere along the way. And maybe the next lifetime is to correct the mistake or learn more, depending. But obviously it had an agenda when it started. Yes,
it has an agenda for every life. So the way you would look at it is a soul has a curriculum that spans many, 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 many lives. And so, it does have a very, very clear understanding of what it is it has to learn and progress through as it goes through each of these lives, whether it be here on Earth or elsewhere, or even spending time learning in the astral. So the soul does know. It does know what it is it has to learn and what it has to do in order to master wisdom and to master unconditional love.
Don't you always wish that the spirit itself and that would tell the real body what it's doing? I'm serious. There's no communication there,
It would be great, but here's the thing, right? If the soul was able to say, don't do that, do this, don't do that, do that, what happens is it negates the whole learning process, because what happens is then it just becomes you become robotic. You're just doing what is being told. And so that defeats the whole purpose of learning. So we're supposed to make mistakes. We're supposed to do good things and stupid things, because that's how we learn. It's this whole duality thing that goes on down here on Earth, and that's very, very important. I think I mentioned in the last radio show that to understand love, you have to understand hate. To understand good, you have to understand bad. So that's why that doesn't happen. We have to learn, and we're not going to learn if somebody keeps telling us or showing us how to do it.
That's kind of weird. I have a chat box question that just came up.
Okay.
She says, I think it's a she. I have a friend who found an old book in a library published in 1920, and he just knew he wrote that book in a past life. He never had this type of experience before.
Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot, where people have connections to places and things. And I've had clients tell me that similar types of stories where they believe, for instance, the whole concept of déjà vu. Right? What's going on with déjà vu? I know I've been here before, or this looks very familiar, but I just can't put my finger on it, type of thing. So I'm going to say that to the person who wrote in that's very, very possible. Very, very possible.
Does a past life and a real life ever get stuck in each other?
Can they overlap?
Sure.
Yeah, they can overlap. Again, it doesn't happen often. Typically, it's it's serial or linear. But occasionally, what you'll have is you'll have a client come in, and you'll know as the facilitator, as a practitioner, that past life is overlapping with this life, and usually it overlaps not a lot, maybe 5-10 years type of thing. And it's not unusual, because what happens is their energy has essentially split. So your energy, a piece of your energy always stays in the astral, and then a piece of your energy comes and incarnates. And how much energy comes down when you incarnate, the soul makes that determination before it comes down.
Wow.
But to facilitate learning, because it's all about learning, some souls will say, you know what, I'm going to jump down the chute again, and I'm going to get another life started, knowing that the past life is wrapping up soon, and that energy will come back. So, yes. So, could there be situations where it's running in parallel? Yes.
Is that what they call?
I have had sessions like that too.
Is that what they mean by walk-in?
No, a walk-in is when one soul incarnates in a body, and then goes through whatever it is it needs to go through for a learning process, and then basically passes the baton to another soul that comes in its place. That's a walk-in. So, for instance, let's just say soul comes in, and the person is 30 years old, and whatever happened in that first 30 years, the soul that came in at birth, it got what it needed out of that life. And then it says, okay, I'm going to step out now. You, the other soul, will step in, and it picks up from there. Because from the age of 30 on, that soul has agreed, I'll pick up the ball here, and the events that will take place in that person's life from the age 30 on, to 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, that's going to be their experience and their curriculum.
So when you bring somebody back into regression, you could actually get 2 lifetimes.
You could get lifetimes. I haven't had anybody come in as a walk-in, but you could get a situation where, and this is a very interesting one, and Michael Newton covers it in his book in great detail in Destiny of Souls, where a soul comes in and they incarnate at the same time in 2 different lives. So you can have a soul in an incarnation, a life, let's say, in the U.S., and then you can have that same soul, or part of that soul, has incarnated someplace in Europe. And that's the ultimate learning, right? Because what's happening there, they divided their energy, and they have two concurrent lives going on at the same time.
Another question is, I heard that a walk-in soul, has a different personality. Is that true?
It could. Typically, what happens is with walk-ins is there could be subtle changes in the person's personality. And people who believe that they had situations where there's a walk-in typically will go back and pinpoint a moment in time and say, well, it was around here that I shifted, I changed, I had a different perspective, I did things a little differently, type of thing. So yes, that's true, but the change is usually subtle. I mean, you don't want something, it's not going to be a situation where somebody is 180 degrees different, because, that would just be, that would be an issue for the person in life, first of all, right? Because people would look at that and say, well, something's not right. Typically, it's very subtle when that happens.
Yeah, like as I said, remember me with the hammers? One hammer right on the head. That'll definitely take care of you. Listen, when you're all done, all right? Now, I know I do it because I got a big mouth anyway, and that's why I'm on the radio. But would you talk about your regression session with somebody? Like turn around and say to them, hey, listen, you know what I was? What I tell my clients is to take a couple of days, a day or two, and just be very introspective and very reflective, because there are lessons that have to be assimilated and you have to mull through. That's the purpose of the session. And also, really pick and choose who you want to have a discussion with, because it was a very special thing for that person. It was an experience that really connected a lot of dots for them. It raised their awareness, their perspective. It's making them look through life through a different lens. The last thing you want to do is to go, wind up talking to somebody who's just going to tell you, it was, you're just imagining things, and that stuff didn't happen, and that stuff's not real. And believe it or not, I've had clients call back and say, their own family members have done things like that to them. And I've had discussions with them, and I said, look, you need to believe what you need to believe. Don't worry about their belief system. That's their belief system. It's your experience. You went through it. It's in your heart. You believe what's in your heart. That's a good way to do it.
Yep.
We are going to wrap it up for the night.
Okay.
Michael, you got to come back. This is getting too good. We go. Really, seriously. I mean, the more and more we're doing this, and we come back and next time we're going to come back and talk about how this can actually help people with other things like alcohol problems, smoking. Yep. You also a Reiki master, and we can get into that a little bit. So we will be in touch. Absolutely.
Absolutely, Bob. Thank you very much for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to get in touch with Mike, his telephone number is 919-745-1225, or you can go to his website at www.imaginehypnotics.com. Now, if you have any more questions, you can just write to Bob Charles Show at live.com, and I will definitely shoot you back an answer, or the websites or whatever else that you happen to ask. Michael, thank you.
Bob, thank you very much.
All righty. Listen,
Okay.
You're listening to the Bob Charles Show.